Hey everybody, I did not feel like I got to go through music section 2 with as much depth as I wanted to, and so in order to help you all have a better preparation, I'm recording a couple of videos from section 2. So let's begin on page 48. I don't do a rundown of the Rodeo song Hoedown. If you want some help with that one, I'm happy to, but I feel like we had enough time to get through that in class, and it's a really accessible song. So just pay attention to the musical features in the listening guide, and here we go, page 48. So, important to remember that during World War II, both the United States and the USSR were allies. This plays into our next composer here. In fact, there was an actual project that happened called the Music Committee of the National Council of American and Soviet Friendship. There we go. In 1944, the Soviet Union hosted a huge concert. That was important and an important part of all of this. And they also want you to realize that this was broadcast nationally. So work was happening all over the USSR that showed American music. In this light, and under this happy set of feelings between the USSR and the USA as allies, we have Roy Harris come into play. Roy Harris is what's called an Americanist composer. He writes music that is very accessible to Americans. And he also is appreciative to the USSR for their part in the World War II ally relationship with the United States. So he got a telegram before writing this symphony from the Russian embassy, wondering if he could do a musical greeting in favor or in honor of this Committee for Cultural Relations. The Russians are under attack, and Harris knows that the United States is helping Russia at this time, and he has strong feelings of friendship toward them. So he writes this Symphony Number 5, and this right here he dedicates to the Russian people, to the valor of the Russian people. This is going to come back to haunt him later. In his dedication, he invokes then Vice President Henry Wallace. Henry Wallace has a lot of Iowa connections, and in some kind of ironic language, they talk about Russia and America throwing together their influence to build democracy. And here's some of the words that really get him later. I'm proud to dedicate my Fifth Symphony to the heroic and freedom-loving people of our great ally, the freedom-loving people of our great ally, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. When this is performed, it is beloved, people love it, but later there will be trouble. So when we're talking about this piece from Roy Harris, Symphony Number 5, it starts out with a robust martial quality. That means that it starts with kind of a militaristic kind of feel or a march. This motif is called frequently motive X, and the motif is here in figure 2-5. It goes dun 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 dun. You'll hear that quite a bit throughout the song. Actek loves to talk about form, so here we talk about the fact that this piece, Symphony Number 5, Movement 1, has a two-part A-B structure. This is called binary form. That should be pretty easy to understand. Two-part binary. All right, so I'm going to play this, and in the background, you'll be able to hear it, and I'm going to highlight some things that you can listen to while they're happening. Hear that motive X, dun 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 dun. There's theme 1 again, dun 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 dun. right here pretty soon. Pretty soon we'll get timpani. That's the timpani right there. But you can still hear that dun 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 dun. There it is again. Right in here now. Pretty soon you're going to hear this call and response between the woodwinds and the strings. Okay, you just heard the trumpets playing fortissimo. It's about to change. Now we have part B. You can hear that it changed quite a bit. You hear those bugles in the background. That was the oboe playing that bugle call. You can hear the strings plucking in the background. Now we're at this heavy pulsation. There was that short crescendo. All right, I'm going to stop that there and we'll move on to the next piece here. Then we have the end of World War II, and we're kind of coping with what happens after World War II. There's a lot of post-traumatic stress that comes out of it. It's important to know that most Americans thought that World War II was, quote, a good war. They felt like their cause had been just, but Americans had very little idea of what was actually happening in those Nazi death camps. The government, the United States government, would try to suppress some of that information. Americans never really had a good idea what was happening until near the end of World War II. In the last months, the Allied forces start liberating the camps, and we start to really, really see some of the horrific things coming out of the Nazi death camps. So here we have images of wedding rings. There were all kinds of awful things that happened. I bring this up because it's important with our next selection to know that the camps are not the only place where civilians are being rounded up and killed or injured on purpose. This is also happening in the city of Warsaw, Poland. Warsaw surrendered to the invading Germans, and as it says here, a systematic annihilation of the city's 350,000 Jews began. We have a very important ghetto here. And in the ghetto, all kinds of awful things happen. In January of 1945, the Soviets liberated Warsaw, Poland, and of the 350,000 Jews, there were only 11,500 still living. Like 97% of the pre-war population of Warsaw, who were Jewish, were killed. In this light, we have our next composer, Arnold Schoenberg. He was Austrian. He was Jewish born, but he converted to be Lutheran. But the Germans didn't really care that much about that. If you had if you had Jewish blood, that was a big problem. So he knew he was going to be in trouble. Potentially, he and his family left Germany. While he's in France, he comes back to being Jewish. And then he moves to California. So he's what's called an expatriate. He moves away from Germany or from Austria to get away from all that. He uses something called 12-tone serialism. When I was playing the piano the other day, you heard me talk about that feeling of home. Well, 12-tone is the opposite of that, and it's very innovative. The Nazis did not like innovation. They wanted stuff that sounded good to their ears. They did not want weird stuff like Schoenberg was composing. So Schoenberg creates a survivor from Warsaw. That's a picture of Arnold Schoenberg there. It is a dramatic cantata, which means that it's a sung story. This phrase Sprechstimme comes up a lot. It's this idea that you're speaking, but you're speaking in a tone, so it's also musical. The style of a survivor from Warsaw is expressionism. You might remember that from the art resource guide. It's not reality. It's not meant to escape reality. It's meant to confront you, and it's supposed to be a little bit challenging to you. This was a very, very moving piece, very difficult for people to experience, but yet highly effective at its goal of making you feel what's happening. In fact, at the first performance, the audience adored it. They just wanted it to keep going. So, I'm going to skip that. Some of the information on here, listening to a typical triad is going to sound like We've Come Home, but Schoenberg says, no, we're going to do this differently, and he has a 12-note scale. He composed using something called a matrix. There's some really interesting stuff in here. If you want to learn how he composed, I recommend you try that. What else do I want to talk about on this? He used the matrix in forward and backward order. So retrograde is backward order. Other interesting features of his composition, you'll see that he inverts notes. All of this is meant to help evoke nightmare. You are not supposed to be comfortable with this. It's supposed to evoke this story of a Jewish person seeing all of his compatriots being murdered in this ghetto. So there's a prayer that comes in frequently. I want you to notice the phrase mute here and what muted means. This is an interesting part too that's kind of offsetting. Reveille is something that's played in the morning in these military camps. He does a play off of that to be much more frightening. So next, listen to the